Welcome to Digital Hospitality. I am your host, Sean Walchuk. This is a Cali BBQ media production. Every week we talk about our ongoing thesis that is digital hospitality. Every business needs to be digital first, and every business also needs to be in the hospitality business. We're very lucky as a barbecue media brand here in San Diego that we've used the internet to share our story and make connections, digital connections that have become in real life connections that have become friendships all over the globe. If you are curious about the future of food, if you're curious about technology, if you're curious about media, if you're curious about sharing your own story, you're in the right place. Welcome. If this is a first-time listener, if you're a long-time listener, we're grateful to have you. This is a very exciting year for Cali Barbecue Media. We're making a lot of connections, not just for Cali Barbecue to become the Amazon Prime of barbecue, build out our ghost kitchen space, virtual kitchen space, but we've launched Restaurant Influencers, which is our second podcast with Entrepreneur and Yelp. We're putting on a lot of different marketing classes, and I've been speaking all over virtually as well as going to be in real life soon. So today we've got a great guest, a fellow Bulgarian, which I don't get to say often, but he's actually the second Bulgarian. Me and my wife, my better half, my Bulgarian bride, we interviewed the mayor of a town called Rajkovsky in Bulgaria. And the mayor, Pavel Gujarov, he was on the podcast. We actually recorded it on my iPhone at his dining room table. Number one, because it was a great conversation. Number two, because we wanted to teach our listeners and our viewers how easy it is to record content, how easy it is to record video, how easy it is to become a media company. So if you're here, welcome, and let's enjoy our featured guest, which is the founder, Photis Patriotis from Gritsee. Photis, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me, Sean. This is great. The Bulgarian thing was kind of surprising, but I didn't know the first time. A couple of times we were talking, and I definitely don't have a Bulgarian name, but I was born there, so that connection is always.
How long did you live in Bulgaria?
Great. I moved when I was 6.
Okay.
So pretty much raised American, outside of Philadelphia, but done a lot of traveling back there. All my mother's side of my family is still there. So I don't really have any family in the U.S. extended except for my immediate family. So that's in Bulgaria and Cyprus. Cyprus is also another great, interesting place in the world right now too, right in the middle between the Middle East and Europe. So yeah, it's been a great ride. It's been fun going into this entrepreneurial journey as well, and meeting so many people from like different immigrants. I feel like it's an interesting thing that people to do that are kind of semi-new in the country can kind of, and then just trying to figure out how to buy in to the American dream has been awesome, so yeah, it's a good thing,
Well, tell me about your American dream. I mean, let's let the listeners know what is Gritsee. So give me your VC pitch.
So Gritsee is we basically surface data for on premises for any kind of business that's really one hop away from the end consumer. Restaurants is the main thing where there's just a ton of data that's missing for what's going on for every single order that you do, your inventory and all that kind of stuff. Traditionally, there's tons of restaurant management softwares out there. You have to type everything in. We found that, and my background is a lot more coming from tech and imaging and things like that. It's just using video and modern video is such a cheap and comprehensive way to be able to get way more of this data, figure out exactly what happened to every single order that left your location, and that's super valuable and becoming more valuable. So the Gritsee started. I got really into this space a couple of years ago, into the whole virtualizing of food brands and on-demand food brands. And as we're going through it, there's a bunch of ghost kitchen stuff that's happening and things like that. And especially I'm not somebody that came from the food industry, but I just loved where that direction everything was going, because a lot of my previous experience was in kind of the retail transformation from retail to mobile. I was doing a lot of mobile software and things like that. And so this kind of was like got really interested in it. But it's still really hard to do,
Yeah.
That's why like the people that are successful in it are still people that have great food backgrounds and things like that, because they're kind of understanding the full gamut from creating a great brand in the beginning of it and all the way through operating it. And then all these types of new technologies, I feel like, are just new tools in the modern age that can help do that better, and we view Gritsee as a major tool that was missing. That data component on the ground is something that's so much easier to get than it was, say, 10 years ago. It's kind of a no-brainer, in my opinion, to
I think
getting this. Yeah.
What's exciting for us is anybody that, is a listener to this podcast knows how much we care about video. We talk about video all the time. We talk about using video on your smartphone to tell your story. Very rarely do we talk about the technology piece of the data, using video in an operational standpoint. I think, when I first became aware of your company, Adrian reached out to me. I get all kinds of different emails all the time from different software companies, different technology companies. Go figure, you have a digital hospitality podcast. Yeah. People tend to find our content. But when it piques my interest is when it's something that from an operational standpoint is something that we're not doing. It's an easy implementation using hardware. I mean, there's never been an easier time to, get surveillance, essentially, from thinking about when we first opened our restaurant in 2008 to what we can do now, from a hardware perspective of actually recording video, it's much cheaper. Do you guys consider yourself a hardware company or more of a software company? I mean, the hardware has to happen, right?
The hardware has to happen. Yep. So on that side, our job as a company is to make it as easy as possible.
Yes.
But the hardware is cheap. It's cheap as it's ever been. It's obviously it's going to get cheaper. But the good thing about video is that, especially in the operational sense, as you're doing, the type of content that you're doing is also like much more high quality. But even in the operational sense, it doesn't even need to be super, super high quality in terms of video, in terms of that. So it's pretty cheap. It's a cheap way to be very ubiquitous. And it's like basically the best sensors that we currently have that are digital. And there are limits to it and that's probably why nobody ever thought about it, because if you're a really good food person, and this is something I've learned through this journey, it's like if you're a really good food person, you're using all of your senses to judge what is happening, right?
Yeah.
You're using your eyes, you're using your taste buds, you're using your fingers and your smell. Like you're fully immersed in that product in order for it to be, and that's what makes it innovative when somebody tastes it and they love it, but it also is what makes it very difficult to just, build an assembly line to get it working. Like, because the rest of those sensors that people are born with just don't really, there's no digital equivalent to anything. The only thing that comes close today is cameras,
Yeah.
There's no taste buds, there's no that stuff. So but just having those sensors is super valuable right now. An extra set of eyes on the stuff you're doing can, there's thousands of dollars of productivity and money just lost per month because of just very simple things that can be picked up with camera sensors as well. So it's like, and it's just about that's why we're a software company, because it's like we're finding the way to unlock that. Right.
Sure.
How do we make it easy for people to unlock that? Because in theory, everybody just has, they're recording their surveillance footage or whatever they have. They might not even have their line or any of that kind of quality stuff on, because it goes in a box and they forget about it unless somebody like breaks into the store or something. But there's actually a lot of value there that needs to be unlocked. It's just about making that easier. Right.
Well, number one, on a higher level, it's easy when you think about, like, we sell a tailgater. That's our family style meal that comes with all of our smoked meats, all of our sides. It's our ribs, it's our brisket, it's our chicken, it's our pulled pork. That gets packaged up. Essentially what Gritsee is going to help us do is to make sure that when that does get packaged up, if our expo forgets to put the pulled pork in, we'll be able to catch that, right? So that we're not so that we know that actually we did miss it. Or if Uber Eats tells us, hey, you were missing something, we actually could say, no, we actually did package that up. But on an even more impactful thing for me is understanding those incremental costs. Once you get into the restaurant business, you start to get into the pennies business, where every single penny matters, and starting to understand. I was watching a comedian on Netflix the other day talking about America is the land of abundance. Like, if you go to any restaurant or you order some food to go, napkins, everyone's getting napkins. Like, you get a stack of napkins. How many fucking napkins do you need? And it's like, yeah, that's always been a problem at our restaurant too, is telling servers or telling the hostess, when someone asks for a napkin, it doesn't mean that they need half of a stack of napkins, but understanding that, like, your software will help us to go, that tailgater that we're talking about. Okay, we need to have 5 barbecue sauces go into that tailgater. Well, if we have an expo that's putting 7 barbecue sauces in every single order and somebody didn't ask for extra barbecue sauce, now if we put that compounding over a week, over a month, over a year, now we're talking about thousands of dollars that we're losing in the packaging and in the product and the waste, because so much of it too is like, from our perspective as a family that orders DoorDash, uses Uber Eats, uses local restaurants, like, we get packages, and sometimes it just comes with so much shit that we have in our cupboard, we have a box of cutlery. Literally, it's like, how much cutlery do we need from these restaurants if there's an option for me to say no? But what I love about what you guys are doing is you're helping solve operationally things that we know intuitively, but now we know them based off of science and data.
Exactly. So this is all stuff. None of the stuff we do ever comes as a surprise in terms of like, oh, this makes sense. Yeah. But it's stuff that you would have a hard time tracking down, especially like. And this is like when you start getting into like multiple locations and stuff like that, you get a weird review or something happens, and that could be, how do you track down whether you messed it up or not? Especially now that there's the third parties, you're giving your food to somebody else, and then now they're responsible for how your brand is perceived, you want to know 100% whether it was on your side or the other side, even if you're not asking for that refund or whatever that is back. You still at least want to be able to drill down and see exactly what happens and address it. And then also, coming from a computer science world, you kind of, the things you said, I think, which a lot of people do really, really well is you might have a rule for for how many sauces or how many napkins or whatever.
You have a checklist.
Yeah, you have a checklist, but it's really hard to know and to maintain that. Right.
Well, it's human error. I don't have a robot that's putting these orders together. It's a human.
Yeah, and it's going to be a long time before you have a robot to do that better, right? So, and people need to be motivated, and you also want to give them leeway to do things really well. That's the good thing about the hospitality is like, maybe this person did want more napkins because they might have a baby with them, and it's something like that. But maybe everybody else doesn't need them. So correct. You kind of want to give people some leeway with things like that, and it's just good to have this stuff on the record. It's good. It's great to have this stuff on the record, be able to go back, see those issues that you had, and come up and work on your playbook, get that checklist down. Maybe there is an exception. There's an exception that we should give this person utensils for whatever reason that is, or we shouldn't. We should give extra sauce in this case, but not in those cases. And that's the kind of stuff that makes the business operationally function really well. And there's just more and more issues like this now. It used to not be as much of an issue when everybody's on premises, because you do something a little off if you have really great front of house people that are in tune with their customers' needs. You don't even notice it as a customer if something's a little off, but by the time it makes the trip to your house, and if it's whether it's 5, 10 minutes, half an hour later, it's just more and more frustrating. It's just not an option to do that kind of stuff. It's not. There is no back and forth, and you don't control the delivery experience either. So it's just become something that's been more and more crucial to do. So we're seeing. That's why we're seeing a lot more people, a lot more interest. It's becoming a must-have very, very quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially once you start to think about delivery from a virtual brand and ghost kitchen perspective, as we're adding additional ghost kitchen locations, we call them friendly ghost kitchen locations, but, we're not sending a general manager down to run a ghost kitchen. We have a key employee that's basically running the kitchen, depending on staffing, up to 2 people per location. You've got to have eyes and ears operationally to understand what's actually happening within those kitchens, right? Yeah. So it's one thing to have a surveillance camera. It's another thing to have software that's tied to our point of sale system, because you guys do integrate with point of sale system, to understand what's actually happening operationally with the quality of product that's going out.
Yeah, this applies to the virtual brands are feeling the largest pain. In a sense, because they've kind of started on, they flipped the whole thing upside down. Whereas usually, if you're traditionally, you would be like, you would do really, really well, like you're a chef, you train an operational thing, and you start building it up until you go, okay, now how do I create a great brand? Right. Correct. But they're starting this way and going backwards this way and trying to relearn all this other stuff. But so it's a good opportunity to add these types of tools in there that are a different way to kind of solve some of these problems. But we do even see a lot of applications for doing things even with people that are not running virtual brands. For example, one thing that we do now is, even before we have a POS integration, we'll give people a timing report out of the gate. It's like a long tail timing report for your orders, like across every hour of your operations. What's the average order times? What's the average prep times and things like that. That's a quick win, and it's a quick way to just spot, issues. You could kind of get that with the KDS, but now you're forcing somebody to start pressing buttons. Yeah. Or you could just put a camera in and see what the timings are.
Well, for me, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with how many restaurants don't even have a KDS, a kitchen display screen.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's amazing. Obviously, I'm wearing a Toast hat. We have Toast in our restaurant. They had their IPO. They have 50,000 locations, but that's not a lot of restaurants. When you're talking about how many restaurants are in the United States, and once you start to think about how many restaurants are actually on the planet that are in the virtual space, that are in the digital space, that understand that they need to be a digital first restaurant. Now you're talking about all of that information. But operational prowess to actually execute. It's so much different when you go from a paper ticket, like an actual printed ticket, to a kitchen display screen that's telling you the time and the date of how long did it take to get that order out. It's a world of different. It's like the difference between a black and white television and a 4K TV. Well, it's probably even more. I
could even blow your mind with saying that. Why do you even need a KDS sometimes? Or you might need to get the information input for the people, but a camera is $20 or $30. Yeah. KDS are much more expensive. It's much more difficult to install, and there's a big training leap as well. I think that's probably even the biggest reason why people don't have it. It's like, okay, I have to do the install, but then I have to go around and I have to know how to work the inside and out for the KDS. And then we know that very well. And then all the other employees know that very well. And then when something breaks, then I have to go and resolve it versus there's some of these things where if you have a camera in, it's very passive. It's a passive way to get a bunch of this data without having to really rework a lot of the process. So we're seeing that as an opportunity. It's like, this could be a much faster way to spin up a ton of locations and get a lot of that, fill a lot of that gap without having to need that the full stack. Now the KDSs are great, right? Because it's just a way better way to communicate with people on the ground.
Do you find it easier to launch in traditionally not a digital first restaurant, or restaurants that already have a robust tech stack?
I'm trying to think of what restaurants don't have a robust tech stack anymore, because everybody's has tablets in there now.
Yeah, because of third-party delivery.
That's at minimum, versus like if you have a tech stack where you're trying to get all those third-party deliveries funneled in and you're going through integration hell or whatever that is. For us, actually, we don't see a big difference between a lot of that, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is, do the people on the ground want to improve the service? Do they want to have better quality coming out of it or not? As long as they do, this is valuable information for them.
Did you miss this year's National Restaurant Association show in Chicago? Did you miss out on all the incredible digital hospitality opportunities in real life? We have great news. Restaurant 365 is announcing that they will have an incredible event called the Restaurant Transformation Tour at the Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles on June 27th. There are 1-day and 2-day ticket options available, and you'll get to hear from industry leaders like Home State's VP of Operation and Controller on how they align their finance and operation teams with real-time data. So many people that listen to this podcast, digital hospitality leaders like yourself, need to be at this event if you are in Southern California and are in the restaurant business. Whether it's accounting, operations, payroll, or HR, there will be top-notch content so you can learn how to run your restaurant operations as efficiently as possible while driving profits. Please use the promo code VIPCaliBBQ for 50% off your ticket, and click the link in the show note to sign up so that we can see you in real life and take some TikTok videos together. Thank you for listening to the show. We will see you at the Restaurant Transformation Tour presented by Restaurant 365. And now back to the show. What's your philosophy on software?
My philosophy on software?
Yeah, like as a builder.
I've done software my entire life.
Yeah.
I think I'm more hacky than maybe I should be at this point in my life, but I still.
So you're not an iPhone user? Are most engineers non-iPhone users? Is that how it works?
Well, I am an iPhone user, but okay. I do think that's important to have software that really drives, like connects with the people using it.
Yeah.
So iPhone is easy for me. It's an easy way to connect with the end users. It's a great way. Like, software is meant to be used by people.
Yeah.
And I was managing a huge engineering team before. And even when you do things that you think are technical documentation, like let's say you have an API. So the whole purpose of an API is a computer to talk to another computer or whatever, right? But really, it's so that another engineer can understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And you're really, like, almost any piece of software you're doing, whatever you do, is just so that other people can understand. You could do helping people solve problems easier, helping people think through problems in a different way. And that applies across the board. Software doesn't get anywhere without a purpose that people define that purpose. Right. And that's kind of why why we do things where it's like we iterate a ton. Right. So, like, for example, these timing reports, we were, the original launch is like, okay, you integrate it, you set the camera up, it's integrated your POS, you get a ton of views and things like that. But then it's like, you get a bunch of people where it's like, okay, we're waiting for integration to get set up, et cetera. It's like, hey, you can actually get a ton of value today. You have the cameras, just get some value out of it right away. And it's something that, and people are like, it's help people out. There's an opportunity. There's an opportunity to use that software to help people gain a ton of value. And that's really what I like about software. That's why I like the opportunity. It's really just helping people, think differently, right? and then also getting that feedback back from people on what works and doesn't work and making that better.
I think the beauty of software is always in the simplification. It's something that when I think about, my own journey of digital hospitality and why we believe the way that we believe, it was, Adam Harris, who's been a guest multiple times on this podcast. He's the founder of Cloudbeds, this incredible technology company in the hotel space. He was running a website company way back in the day when we first switched our first website. And what he told me was, Sean, I'm going to tell you something about the internet. And if it's not easy enough for you as a normal human being to understand, for you to use, to want to use, if you need some layers of complexity of how to use this software, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's like, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And I'm going to switch you to WordPress. You can do it yourself. I'm going to teach you a couple things, but then you can publish by yourself. And like that guiding principle of like, if it's not easy enough for me to use, then it's not going to work. So we have no problem going and trying and testing new, whether it's a social media app, whether it's a software, because either it's going to work and we're going to find it, we're going to like it, and we're going to work with the team. One of the things I love about the space that we're in now, this digital hospitality space, this new frontier, is like, there's never been a time where a restaurant owner can work so closely with founders of tech companies, with engineers of tech companies, with true leaders in the space, and their feedback matters. Like, I know that the feedback that I give to Toast, the feedback that I give to you and your team, the feedback that I give to 7 Shifts, like, I know it's not just a selfish reason. I know that if they fix it for me, they're going to fix it, and it's going to enable them to fix it for so many other restaurant clients.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting time. This is kind of my process of working as an engineering manager, doing engineering. Begin with working with huge companies all the time, and then breaking into doing Gritsee. We're basically like, hey, you get a ton of this engine, you get a ton of value for almost nothing, just because you're getting a lot of that, like what a big company pays people hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. You're getting that and being able to say like, hey, you know what? This is actually what's important to run a business like this. That's super valuable information. I think one of the things you hit on that was the thing about software is that it has to be easy, but defining easy is the hard part, right? So
correct.
And easy is different by cohort. Like for me, it's very easy for me to go into a terminal and interact with the terminal in Linux or something, right? Yeah. So that's not easy for me. For me, that's actually easier than clicking around on a desktop, right? Yep. So so it's actually like those things are people have developed that. They didn't make that command line thing to make it hard. They made it to make it easy. They just made it easy for this cohort of people. But what are the things that are easy for the hundreds of thousands and millions of restaurateurs and people in this business that are help them achieve their goals? Is it's a really important thing to know. So it's important that we listen to everybody. It's important that we get a lot of that, as much of that feedback as possible, and that's the way you make great software.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's interesting to see, because we've tried so many softwares that didn't work, or they had this complex, sales process and then onboarding process where I had to, sit down with a manager for multiple hours to, show me how to use their software. And for me, I just come back to before. It's simplicity. When I open up my iPhone box, I don't get any instructions on how to use my iPhone. If you go to IKEA and they say build this piece of furniture, I'm terrible at building. My wife puts together all the furniture in our house, but like, what is it? It's an Allen wrench, right? Like, they literally try to make it as simple as possible. And the easier that we make software, the easier that we make anything. But for us, the easier we make barbecue, the more accessible it is to people. Like, somebody that loves the true craft of barbecue knows that it takes 14 hours to smoke a brisket, but sometimes they just want brisket now. They don't want to go through the process of, of getting the brisket ready, putting it on the smoker, prepping it, smoking it, cutting it, getting it, it's like, sometimes I just want to order brisket and eat it. So for me, it's exciting to be in this space. It's exciting to meet founders like you. One of the questions that I love is, we've had so many founders on, but when was your oh shit moment? When was your, I'm going to jump off the cliff like this? Like, before I was working for this team, now, hey, did you go to your significant other, your wife, and you say, hey, I'm ready to start my own company? What happened?
Well, I'm lucky I didn't have a wife at the time, but I've had one. So I mean, for me, it was, a lot of it was, it just, I just diving really deep into the problems. If anything, that's my drawback, is I really like to solve a lot of these problems. Is I had left my last company, and I was like, exploring what I wanted to do next, and like that's where that idea being introduced into the virtual food space and really digging in on that and seeing like, okay, this is really cool stuff is happening here. There's an ability to really change the way that people eat everywhere. And because it's just, from the point of storytelling around food, which is one of the most important aspects of it, all the way down to how that those goods are brought to the person's house. There's a lot of really cool things happening. So I just kept getting more and more interested in diving deeper and deeper until like I hit a wall. That's really what it was. It's like I hit a wall with, it's like, what, I really, really want this type of software. Yeah. If like we did, because we spun up a couple virtual brands in DC. We were learning a bunch of stuff from that, learning more and more about that. And it's like, hey, this is something I really need to do. It's something that it's a big blocker for me. It's got to be a big blocker for other people. Started building some of the technology there, and then starting to talk to more and more people, and they're like, what, we really need this as well. And this is a big problem in the space. I'm like, I have to do this. I have to like go and solve this problem. Just go all in and be the person that can be there for this one problem set, and then I think fortunately it's something that we think applies to a lot of businesses and a lot of locations. So, and we're happy solving those niche issues for that, so that's really what drives me. It's just kind of like constantly being in that problem solving attitude, that's
who was the first person you convinced?
The first person we actually, so Adrian is actually the first person who is now our partnerships manager. He was a manager at a general manager at Vapiano's. I don't know if they shut that down during COVID, but like we were playing with the video stuff in our own ghost kitchens and things like that. He's like, and I was like telling him what we want to do. He's like, oh man, this is going to give me so much more information about how like this and this could do. Like, can you install this for me right away? And like, we had a really, really janky version of the kit back then, so went in there, tried to run the wires myself, got the ladder, putting it up, and he's like, started looking at it, and he just became like a true believer, and then and that's why he's on the team, because, he really knows how, the business works in a lot of ways from a GM side, and was able to communicate that and help us pare down the solution. So that was, I think, a really big win, is just having the early people like that on, and then now they're part of the team. And, from there, we've been finding a ton of different, it's one of the things well, I've been talking to more and more restaurateurs. It's just so interesting because they're very, very interested in tech, even though a lot of them say they hate technology. it's
We
kind of
all
like,
love technology. Everyone loves
yeah,
technology. They just don't know it. Like we use technology every single day, all in our lives, and we don't understand. And we take it for granted, I think is really the bottom line. We take for granted the thing that we have in our pocket. Back to my grandfather from Bulgaria.
yeah,
When he immigrated over to the United States, he would write a letter to his sister in Bulgaria. That letter cost him probably $100 to mail, and it took 6 months to get over to his sister. My wife, every single day, is on Viber in high definition video chatting with her grandmother who lives in the village, a village of a couple hundred people, video
yeah.
chatting because of the internet. Yet we take that that technology for granted every single day.
Yeah, and our customer success team is in Macedonia.
Wow.
So like they're able to help out with they're able to figure out what's going on in a business anywhere on the planet, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it's kind of interesting that being able to kind of join together and really be able, you and I are talking, we're on the opposite sides of the U.S.
Yep.
We're gonna help you guys out with how you guys are working on operations as well, and that's the kind of thing where it's more and more of that is just being unlocked, right? And and I think that's what I think everybody, being a business owner, it's always good. I think that's what I was saying, that a lot of the restaurateurs are interested in to keep their, was that your ear to the tracks or something, and see like, hey, this is something that's interesting. Is this going to give me an edge? Is this something that is going to be change the way my business works wholesale? Even as much as everybody's like, well, I really concentrate on the service. It's like, well, maybe my service could be better, right? So it's all about like, what is it that you really care about your business, and then using the technology to make that even better. If you're like, if you're great on the branding side, maybe it's like, how do I share that brand wider? If you're great on the local side, like how can I gain a better hold of my local area? Or, if you're great in the ops side, how can I do really, really well with ops? So there's ways to double down. The technology just helps you double down on what you already do a lot better. Yeah. And I think that's what, it's again, like coming from a place where, we're in, like from Bulgaria, where it was the communism and things like that. It's kind of great to work with business owners that are like, I'm in charge of my destiny. I can go and find a piece of knowledge, or I could go make this change in my business, and it can go work a lot better, and that's been really cool. It's been really a great process for that. So
do you have any mentors, anybody that you lean on?
So I have a couple of our investors have been really great mentors. A couple. So there's been some really great. I've been working with Corey Manicone from Zool. They just went to Kitchen United now. He's been great. I've been working with him a lot. And then there's been a couple other people like that that have been really instrumental in helping me think through both just as a general business sense. Like, you have a software business, make it simple. What's the simplest way to get people more value? And also from the hospitality, for the food and hospitality space, that has been like, hey, this is the best way everybody thinks about this stuff. So I'm always looking for more mentors. There's a lot of different facets to this type of thing. So trying to get as much input as possible has been great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things for us. That's why we love doing this podcast. We connect with people all over the globe, people in the hospitality space, restaurant space, small business space. All it takes is asking a question. All it takes is reaching out. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? You send someone a DM and they don't respond. For me, what I've learned, especially recently, is that the asking for help. We always say, stay curious, get involved, ask for help. asking for help is such a powerful thing to do. It's just such an unnatural thing to do. We tend to think of it as weakness when we're asking for help, yet there's so many people that have accomplished so many things that we admire, we look up to, and we're just not willing to just go and say, hey, can you help me with this one problem?
Yeah.
It's literally just uttering it to them that puts that idea out to them, which allows them to put it out to their network.
And people, and it helps them too. You never know. One of the things I learned a lot is like, you never know how you asking for help can actually help the other person.
Yep.
A lot of times as well. There's a back and forth there with everything where they might be seeing a bunch of different. Maybe they want more better feedback, like you said. Maybe they want better feedback on what they're doing, and this is a great way to do that. Maybe they have some other, especially when you're talking about investors and things like that, they have different types of businesses that this helps them gain insight on. So there's it usually, if done right, asking for help leads to a two-way relationship, I think. Yeah. So that's the way it's the way everything works. It's still relationship based in the digital world. It's just you just don't need to have to go grab a coffee down the street anymore. We can do this podcast, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, and that's what I love about the process so far. And as far as the product wise, it's been great just meeting tons of people. I think I met a lot of people in this space like you through this process, and I think that there's a couple of our customers where they're like, you know what, I was thinking about getting out of this business, but just seeing the, how everybody's rethinking this stuff just gave them like a whole new breath of fresh air about this is a whole new way to think about things. It's a mental thing, it's a fun, making it fun again, right? There's a way to do this that's fun, and that's what's great about it,
Yeah, I think that's one of the driving forces of why I get out of bed every morning is that I know what I'm doing, I love to do. I absolutely love to have these conversations. I love to connect with people that listen to this podcast, that come to our clubhouse rooms, that interact on TikTok or hit me up on LinkedIn. No matter where it is, there's so many cool, interesting people that are doing some really cool shit, some really cool stuff that sometimes it's not directly applicable to our business, but a lot of the times it is. And when we have a conversation, you just don't know where that conversation is going to go. Anybody that's listening to this podcast, what kind of advice would you have if they're listening, if they're in the hospitality space and they want to jump off that cliff? They have an idea rattling around in the back of their head, like, oh, I've got this great idea for how I can fix this, but maybe I don't have an engineering background or a computer science background. Well, what kind of advice would you give them to get to the next step?
Find the easiest way you can to do it. Sometimes having an engineering background is more of a detriment because you're going through the most complicated way of doing it rather than the easiest, you know? So, and a lot of people tell you just need to go find somebody to do, to build an app for you or something like that. It could be, start off with, I had a lot of people that ask me about tech stuff all the time, and my thing is always like, can you do this by texting people?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Can you do something like, can you at least show that there's, and even can you at least show that there's some interest in that way? And even with us, we have our dashboard with all the video stuff and things like that. The number one thing people open up is get them an email with a great report.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Or maybe even with a text message, right? If you really want that stuff, to go to where the people are anyway, and that's the best place to start. So, and a lot of that stuff doesn't require being super technical. Like if there's an idea that you think is going to make a big impact for everybody, or for the world, and for the way that certain things work, there's finding the way to make that as easy as possible without dealing with engineering and all that kind of stuff is probably a better idea if you're not doing it that way. So like finding those little tricks, levers to pull is super important, and then you can build from there. It's a lot easier to build from there. that's a much better starting point.
Yeah,
You know,
that's great advice.
yeah, like it's just, it's more applicable. You know, if you have an easy story to tell that people can gravitate towards, then that's a really important thing to have, and you can start keep building up from there. But you can't go from like, oh, I need to do all this stuff first, and then I might have a story, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
It's definitely good advice. Well, anybody that's listening, please remember we do a Clubhouse every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, every Friday, 10 a.m. We're going to have Photis on once his episode debuts, so we can talk more. You guys can ask him direct questions. Clubhouse is an incredible place where we believe a rising tide lifts all ships. So stay curious, get involved. By getting on Clubhouse, you're able to interact with me, with our team from Cali Barbecue Media, with Stover, with Toby, with Kyle, with Steven, a bunch of the people that listen, Troy Hooper, who shows up every week. We're grateful for so many people that have helped us really, get from one podcast to two podcasts. And now we're connecting with more people all over the globe. And Photis, we love what you're doing. We're very excited to be launching Gritsee at Cali Barbecue at our Ghost Kitchen locations. We're going to be making some content, some video getting done in the kitchen, some meta type video stuff. But where can people find you if they want to learn more about Gritsee?
So Gritsee's www.gritsee.com, GRITSEE.com, and Photis at Gritsee.com, PHOTIS, like photograph with an IS at the end. So PHOTIS at Gritsee.com. So I love to hear from everybody. I'll be on the Clubhouse.
Perfect. We look forward to it.
Yeah.
Super appreciate Adrian getting it together. Appreciate the company that you're building. Super excited to see what you guys do in 2022. Gritsee, if you guys need a camera-based operational solution for your kitchen, your ghost kitchen, reach out to these guys at Gritsee. They do phenomenal work, and stay curious, get involved. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you guys need to reach out to me, it's at Sean P. Walchef, SHAWNP. WALCHEF on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Clubhouse, everywhere. Hit me up. Appreciate you guys for listening, and we will catch you next week.